All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Anna Palmer, the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News, and we are thrilled to be here tonight as media partners with the U.S. Mayors. Thank you, Tom, right in the front, and as well with Fidelity Investments for partnering and making this whole event possible. This evening, we are going to be talking to North Carolina Mayor Elaine O'Neill, looking at what's happening at the local level and how things get done there, maybe some lessons that could be learned here in Washington as well. And afterwards, I'm going to be joined by Pam Everhart, SVP of Fidelity Investments and Head of Regional Public Affairs and Community Relations. Just a reminder for those who don't know about us, we are a 2-year-old media startup focusing on power, people, and politics here in the Capitol. We would love for you to share about this conversation. You can find out about us on all social media platforms at Punchbowl News. And with that, I'm going to welcome Mayor O'Neill to the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we appreciate it. All right, what a time. Yes. So we are at the first day of the Mayor's Conference. Yes. You just finished your first year.
My first year.
Of your first term.
Yes.
As Mayor of Durham, North Carolina. Think about that. There you go. You made it through.
I made it through.
You came to live
and believe it?
I
can't believe it.
So talk about that. I just set the stage for us. COVID-19, you're having a housing crisis, the economy. How have you approached some of the challenges that are happening right now in Durham?
Well, I'm not new to politics. I am a new mayor, but I was a former judge, served as a judge for 24 years at the district court level, which is our trial level, and at the superior court level, which is our felony level of trial. So that's what really led me to run for the mayorship. And I approached it from what I saw in the courtroom. Many times in a courtroom, it is full of human drama on all levels. And there are a lot of needs that people have when they come into a courtroom. And so I felt that there was something that I could do on the other side, on the proactive side of things. Didn't realize it's not quite that way once I got to this seat, but I was hoping to be able to sort of influence what I call the invisible people. And those are the people who are a part of our most vulnerable populations, particularly those who have been justice involved. And so from that vantage point, I wanted to be able to engage them in the process of believing that they too had a chance in America to participate fully in the American dream, starting with housing, which happened to be at its crisis level right now.
Yeah, that leads me into one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, which is housing in Durham. It's a crisis, something that the city has been struggling with. There is no magic bullet here, but what can you talk about? How are you approaching that? Is there one or two things that you've learned or things that you're trying to implement that you think are worthwhile and are working?
Well, it is a very complex area. I did not realize that as a judge. I did not realize the interplay of city, state, and the federal level. So the first thing, we are 7-member council, so after about 6 months, it occurred to me that when you're an elected official, you're coming in with all kinds of expertise or not in some of these very sensitive areas. And the one thing that I wanted our council to do was to have a common base of knowledge about housing. So for the last 4 or 5 months, we've been doing a deep dive into the housing arena in Durham, talking with various players in that arena. On Thursday, when I go back, we'll be talking with our Durham Housing Authority. We'll be talking with our realtors, just so that we will have a common base of knowledge. And from that, we hope to develop some general principles that we can govern by and try to come to some agreements on. One of the difficult things is, as you're sitting in the mayor's seat, we are not responsible. We don't build housing in our city. We have to partner with people. So it's very important that you begin to build those partnerships as you're actually helping to build housing. And I wanted us to have a focus so that we would know where we would have leverage points as a council to make things happen. So I'm really proud about what we're doing in that arena in terms of just the learning process.
It seems a really collegial kind of process, right? You're kind of bringing in different people from different factions and kind of trying to set the stage and the foundation, which kind of works for the housing metaphor, I guess, to try to make progress. Talk about, we're in Washington, D.C., divided Washington. Often people are very frustrated about how it doesn't work. What pieces of advice or things do you think the federal government might learn from your approach?
One thing you have to do is, I think, sometimes I look at the news. I don't look at the news a lot. I learned that as a judge, not to look at the news a lot. But one of the things, sitting in the mayor's seat, you feel really disconnected. I do a lot of times from what is actually happening in Washington. Even though there's a lot of interplay, there's lots of money that's out there, but then when you actually figure out that it's a competitive process and there are 10 million dates that you have to comply with, and all of it kind of throws you a little bit to actually see how you can accomplish some of these things. So one of the things that I would like for our representatives to do is to remember who they are working for. That is the general public. Now, there are lots of things that you can argue about. Granted, that's part of our democracy, is to kind of have that rub, but there are some basic things that people should not argue about, and that's providing housing, providing health care, making sure that people have a decent a way to make a job. We should not argue about those things.
I want to talk about the changing demographics of Durham and kind of the systemic barriers that communities of color face in your area. What have you seen in Durham?
Things are not doing well, probably, and one of the things I like about coming to this conference is that we have a lot of commonalities when you talk about people. I've never heard crisis so much mentioned as I have over the last couple of years in terms of the types of crises that mayors are facing. Right, and we're on the ground. We are the boots on the ground, and we have to deal with those things every single day. We're getting an email or a text or a phone call or running into somebody that's having those problems. So we have to be in a space where we can have some time for innovation to really think about these things and then be able to connect those to people who are actually going to benefit from the changes that we're trying to make. So I've been trying to be inclusive of those populations who have been marginalized. For instance, you ask people, how many members of a gang do you know as an elected official? Do you know anybody? Do you have anybody in your phone who is living in one of those marginalized communities? Do you know anybody in a rest home outside of your family? So it's important those voices are sitting at the table. And one of the things that I ran on was that those closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. And they have to be sitting at that table. So as a result of that, in some of those meetings, I have invited some of those young people that I've dealt with as a judge to sit at those tables and to help us to develop things that will help them to become a part of middle America. I always tell people there's a third world living right around the corner from you if you look for it. You need to look for it because it's there.
Durham was recently selected to receive up to $5 million from the Partnership for Equitable and Resilient Communities. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that money is going to be parceled out?
Yes, I'm so excited about it. Well, and it's basically the Melville Trust selected 4 cities as a cohort, an inaugural cohort, to participate in whatever the mayor chose, whatever initiative, whatever they decided to.
Think about that power.
Yeah, yes, isn't that great? So I selected housing for those who are justice involved, to focus in on those persons who have not been able to secure housing because of a criminal background. So that's where we're focusing in. We also are a Harvard Bloomberg City Initiative, a part of that city initiative, and so Harvard Bloomberg Initiative, they are all there. It's one group, and so we hope to be able to have some innovation in that space to help those who have paid their debt to the justice system but have not been able to pay their debt to society in general, and they have not been able to find a place to call home.
Talk about that kind of public-private partnership. I mean, it seems to me that that is a place where you've been able to kind of tap into different resources, different communities, different, thought leaders. Has that been helpful?
Very much so. I always have to relate back to my career as a judge because I spent so much time in that space. But as a judge, you're used to saying something and it happens. Just like that. I hereby sentence you to life in prison. I hereby am placing you on parole or probation, and it happens right then. As a mayor, no. Never has it happened in this past year. So it's important to have partners who can help you navigate how to get things done. Corporate America, I've never had the experience of working in corporate America, but I have had the experience of watching how corporate America works. And so they are generally, because they're selling something or making something happen, they're generally more proactive than governments, in my opinion. That's been what's happening with me. So I have relied on those partnerships to move things forward. They are very important.
You're talking about the initiative and kind of people paying their debt to society and paying that, but financial inclusion is also something, and kind of when you think about your own community, the partner for this event, Fidelity, we're going to talk about that next, has a major initiative when it comes to financial inclusion. How important do you think a factor that is when it comes to this next generation of Durham residents and kind of bringing in, again, those communities of color and helping them rise up?
Very important. The poor are getting poorer. Middle-class America is getting poorer. And it saddens me when I think about our police officers and our first responders, those bus drivers and all of those folk in Durham, North Carolina, they're having problems living in Durham, North Carolina. Now, what does it look like for a city to have its workers who are making the city go, chugging it out every day, and they can't afford to live there? There's a problem with that. People should be able to live in a reasonable distance, especially if you're a city worker. You need to be able to live in your city. And right now, those populations are having trouble. And that's irregardless of race, It's all middle class and those who are in the lower socioeconomic sphere. They're having trouble staying in Durham, and that's sad. I am a first generation college grad. My dad was a factory worker. My mother was a stay-at-home mom until they say I came into the picture and then she went to work. But so he was able to work 49 years at Liggett & Myers at a salary of $7 an hour, raise 5 kids, put 3 of them through college off of that salary, and was able to own a home that is now worth more than my home. Right? That's how gentrification has worked. So we've got to begin to take some different types of steps of commitments to people who have been left behind. And I always try to keep in my mind that baby that is going to be born or is born in Durham, North Carolina, who has no one, or that elderly person who has no one but a system to rely on for their transition into either the next life or even into adulthood. I keep my eye on those 2 people and make sure that somehow or another, whatever I'm doing is connected back to those at the least of our society.
Our time is quickly coming to a close, but before I let you go, we are in Washington, D.C. We've talked about all the things that are happening in Durham, some of the kind of systemic issues that you're facing, how you're trying to kind of rise up communities of color. But you've met with the president.
I have.
You're here right now doing the conference, receptions. What is the one thing, and we ask this a lot when we talk to folks outside of Washington, what is the one thing that you think that you want Biden or this Congress to know about what's happening at the local level?
We need your help. We are in crisis level. We are there. It's not, and it's been there. And it's not going to get any better unless we all work together. At the end of the day, when we leave this earth, some people will remember whether you were a Republican or Democrat or independent. Maybe somebody will talk about that. But at the end of the day, most of us want to know that we have helped somebody as we have passed this way. And so that's what we should always be about as public servants. Remember, that's what you do. You are to serve the public, the entire public. Everybody counts. Everybody matters.
Mayor O'Neill, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Now I'd like to welcome Pam Everhart, SVP and Head of Regional Public Affairs and Community Relations at Fidelity Investments. Pam, thank you so much.
All right. Microphone's right there.
All right. Well, that's a tough act to follow, but we'll do our best.
We'll try. She was great. Just absolutely great.
Absolutely. And it really kind of tying into why we are here today. So I want to get right to it. Start with the fact that you all had some big news today. Fidelity made an announcement of the launch of a new social impact initiative. Tell us about Invest in My Education.
Thank you for having us today. I am so excited to share with everyone that Fidelity announced the launching of a new strategic investment in the education of Black, Latino, and other underserved students. We are partnering with the United Negro College Fund, who has a history of administering scholarships. They are an expert in the area. And so when we thought about making a $250 million investment, it was not just a contribution. As I said, it was an investment. And Fidelity tends to look at everything from a business perspective, a long-term view. That's why I said investment. We did a lot of background research. We're all about the data and looking at where there was need in underserved communities. So, Anna, investing in underserved communities is nothing new for Fidelity. We have always been committed to education, financial education in particular. We've always been committed to diverse communities, diverse workforce. We're looking to increase the diversity of our customers. So when we started digging into the data, a couple of things were highlighted. Only 21% of Black students graduate from college in 4 years. Only 32% of Latino students graduate from college in 4 years. I believe it was 45% of whites. And then with Blacks, in terms of their loans, over a 4-year period or 5-year period, their loans tend to be a lot higher. They borrow at higher rates. They're riskier loans, up to more than $25,000 that they have in debt more than their white peers. And the other thing is mentors. Looking into the data, only 30% of Black students have ever had a mentor in their lives. So when we looked at all of this data and looked at how we could make a difference, we wanted to address some of these systemic problems.
Yeah, I wanted to let's dig a little deeper because I think it's super interesting. One, you're choosing the college age kind of level. You know, why that kind of age? And then I think the second thing you started to tap into, which is this holistic approach, right? It's not just money. Money is great and that's necessary and it's a lot of money, $250 million. But you're also doing mentoring. You're really kind of taking a fulsome approach.
Right. So the most important thing is that holistic investment in the education of kids. Money is important. I won't deny that. Scholarships are great, but that's not everything, right? Because you can have the money, but then you may not have the mentoring. You may not have the college coaching. Just trying to figure out what classes to take. I mean, my daughter is a sophomore at Howard, and we were just going through the curriculum. I'm like, why are you taking that? You shouldn't be taking that. You know, I'm saying, so I think they need that kind of help. And then the other thing with the wraparound services that we're going to provide is, and the mayor mentioned sort of the mental health piece. That's so important. You know, the stress that students go through today in colleges, so the wraparound services that we're going to provide in this program will be able to address some of that. And then we're also going to provide what we call retention and completion grants. So we'll provide up to 2,500 students with scholarships where we will make sure that they graduate from college with no debt. But then there are a lot of other students who just need that little extra to graduate. I was talking with one of my colleagues at Fidelity, and she was saying after her first year in college, freshman year, she still owed $900 in her tuition bill. And she said, I was going to have to drop out after my freshman year, $900. And she said, I didn't have it. My parents didn't have it. They couldn't borrow it. She didn't know where she was going to get it from, the 900. Luckily, she was able to get an internship, which is so important. Happened to be at Fidelity. She got an internship after her freshman year, and she was able to pay that $900. So with these retention and completion grants, we will be able then to grant those students through colleges. We won't be doing it ourselves, but we're going to fund those colleges because they will be able to identify what's real and what's not. And to then pay that additional tuition so that people can continue and persist and complete their education.
I want to talk also, so this is a pilot program. We were talking about this backstage a little bit in terms of the metrics that you all are kind of measuring the success of this. It's not just kind of, all right, we've decided to make this commitment and you walk away from it. Talk about what the metrics look like for you, but then also how you can be nimble potentially if maybe something isn't working or there's a better idea that happens through the 5 years.
Right. So going back to the way we look at this from a business perspective, and our CEO always wants to know the metrics and how we're measuring. People say you treasure what you measure. So we will be looking at college completion rates. We will be looking at the number of students who graduate with no debt. We will be looking at internships that these kids get access to. And then if they will graduate with good paying jobs. So those are the metrics, the success measures that we will be looking at. In terms of, one thing I want to mention that we didn't talk about that makes this program really different is that, normally the scholarship programs support kids who are at the very highest levels, like 3.7 and above. Our program will be focusing on what we call the mighty middle. The mighty middle. Those solid B level students, right? Those who have leadership skills, who have potential, who have determination, and who have grit. But for some reason, and there are a lot of systemic issues and problems that have prevented them from getting at the highest levels, but they are the hard workers every day, making this economy work. And we want to make sure that those solid B, that mighty middle, gets an opportunity. And I think that's what makes one of the other reasons why this program is particularly different.
We just heard from Mayor O'Neill talk about the systemic issues facing communities of color, particularly in Durham. 5 years down the road, what impact are you hoping, expecting to have made with this program?
This is what I hope. I hope that the students who have come through this program, graduated with no debt, have been able to lay a foundation where they can start to build generational wealth. That's what I'm looking for. And I think by investing, a long-term investment in these students, and it won't stop just when they graduate from college. We have to be able to make sure they have, like I said, the good paying jobs, the internships, the opportunities. Doors have to be opened for these students. Doesn't always happen, right? The coaching, all of that, I'm hoping at the end, that's what they will be able to do. They will be able to pass on what they've learned, pass on some wealth so that their kids will be able to go to college and hopefully at little or no debt. So that's what I'm hoping.
All right. Well, Pam, thank you so much for sharing the stage with me this evening. Unfortunately, we're all out of time. I want to thank Mayor O'Neill as well and Fidelity Investments for making this conversation possible. And of course, the U.S. mayors for partnering with us and allowing us to be a media partner. We have cocktails and food for a little bit, so please stay, mingle, enjoy. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.